Good afternoon, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life, except for this weird camera split. But we're out of here. We fixed it. That was a surprise. I'm going to re-add it, but this time it won't be with a fake face. We're going to have Dave Bradley here. We're all excited to hear from Dave. It's been a few weeks. Dave, how you doing, my man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm enthusiastic about the future of Alberta. I see, there were Liberal tears left over. I thought they had filled the reflection pool with them all in Washington, D.C. I thought the fountains that Trump is reanimating had sucked all those Liberal tears and occupied them. But you managed to get some of those, huh?
I'm very good at curating and collecting Liberal tears. And so, I live in downtown Calgary, a place like the only place in Calgary where there are Liberals to cry. So,
well, yeah, in Calgary, that's true. Yeah, you got some crybabies up in Edmonton. They like to cry up there. It's Cry Town. They should rename it Cry Town.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's better than their incentives, and a huge percentage of Edmonton is paid by the government and or union workers. So.
Yeah. Sludge falling in over there. So a lot's been going on for the past 3 weeks. So I had to go back into quite a bit of my bookmarks where I save all the stories here. And one, a lot of them don't make the cut and are less relevant right now, but one from kind of 2 weeks ago that I think is still reverberating, and I want to hear your comments on it because it is pretty amazing. It's the tentpole hoax of Canada, which is the fake residential school genocide that never happened, that they ran an entire, remember, just so people understand exactly what happened. Canada was in general elections in 2021, and it actually looked like there was a chance anyway that the Conservatives were going to win and Trudeau was going to be out of office. Don't know if that would have happened, but there was at least some momentum. And suddenly, lo and behold, we found out that Canada was genocidal and we'd killed a bunch of people. And there was actually, it's still a holiday, like it's coming up soon. It's like the Truth and Reconciliation Day, they called it. And they told everyone to go home and think about your life and how you contributed to all of this and all the things you did wrong. But of course, there were never any bodies or real graves. It was all a complete and total hoax. And this week, the Globe and Mail last week, actually published an article saying there is no reconciliation without truth, finally admitting that it was a fake radar, the rocks underground, basically. And so we're finally having a conversation in Canada. And this whole story kind of functions like in the United States, the way the Charlottesville tentpole hoax functioned, where for years, if you were a Trump supporter, it was a very fine people. Oh, Trump said that there's Nazis were fine people. Nothing like that ever happened. Just like in Canada, if you were a denier. And then there's also good news this week. The Senate actually struck down. So this is an example of how Canada sometimes can work in the Senate. This is what the Senate is for. The actual Senate actually did shut down the ability to criminalize denial about the residential schools. But anyway, we're having a conversation about the tentpole hoax in Canada. About the fact it's not even under debate. There is no genocide, but we're now having a conversation about, if we're going to accuse people of genocide, shouldn't we have some proof? So we're there at least, right? We're there at least. So do you see it the same way as I do? Is this a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the first sort of attempts to dip their toes into the water of, if we just push the right outrage buttons, we can steal money. And, that's been taken to the extreme since then.
Or the country, because don't forget, it was during the writ, right?
Well, yeah. So they're, for sure, they've used the outrage buttons very successfully for a long time in Canada. And the sort of like murdered Indigenous is one of their their favorite flags to tie on to things. And it's, a favorite of Liberals everywhere to say there's been terrible things done, mind you, by Liberals to the,
and so they try, because of all of this, my kids at a study school, and someone brought it up in the study school to teach them. And so at the end of the day, they were asking me about it. And I said, well, the truth is this is the missing and murdered women question. And I said, well, they asked me if it's true. And I said, yeah, it's true. There are missing and murdered Aboriginal women at a rate that is much greater than any other ethnicity or anything like that. And I said, and then they asked why it happened. I said, well, that's the problem. No one actually wants to talk about the problem here. The problem was very simple. It's the rights that occur on reserve that are patrimonial, not matrimonial. If you get into a fight on reserve and a man and a woman had too much to drink, or whatever reason that everyone fights, white people, black people, domestic disputes happen amongst everyone. But the quirk with the natives in Canada is the woman has to take a hike. And so we've always understood the answer to this problem. It's that you have to make matrimonial property rights. And that would pretty much solve the problem, because it's, if the woman is the one who's got to go on the road to survive and go find a place to live, well, where do they end up? Right. And so I explained it to my kids. I said, there's nothing to do with you. No one wants to talk about the answer. Obviously, your children, you have nothing to do with the problem or the answer. The problem is no one wants to talk about what the solution to this is. They want to leave it. And this is really where it's at in Canada. They leave this question with the like as if there's a serial killer, right? It's like there's serial killers out there, and there's people. Now there might be. I don't know if there is. I mean, for sure, we don't know. But the point is, all these women are missing and murdered because they become drug addicts on the street, and nobody cares where they go. Nobody. That's the problem. No one's there to identify a body. No one is there to do anything. They get picked up in snow removal. You know, that's what's going on.
It's the effects of free money, really, right? So you've got this situation with the reserves in Canada that, ironically, Pierre Trudeau and Jean Chrétien tried, the original Trudeau and Jean Chrétien tried to do away with in the 60s or 70s there, when Chrétien was Minister of Indian Affairs, Trudeau was the Prime Minister, and they tried to abolish the Indian Act and basically, force real individual property rights onto Native tribes, where right now the rights are very collectivist. And that really muddled picture on who gets what rights, and as defined by the very corrupt band councils, is a big part of what leads to all of the problems that that the Native communities in Canada have. And it's because the floor for how bad can you fail if you're living on the reserve is quite high. There's a very strong social safety net because there's so much free money. So it's very easy to get free housing. It's very easy to subsist. And at the same time, because there's no real true individualism and capitalism and property rights, the ceiling for how well these people can do, and sort of, the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps, it just doesn't really apply. So the difference between the outcome for a man born on the Native Reserve who decides to become an alcoholic at 15 and then a fentanyl addict at 21, it's not that different from somebody who works hard and attempts to pull themselves out of that situation. And the free money flowing in is what really subsidizes that whole situation, right? And so we're, we've put them in this spot where they're following their incentives, and that's a big part of what leads to so many issues in that community. And that's something that you see anywhere that free money is poured in. And you see that in the Black communities in the US, where it's just very difficult for people who are
the homeless industrial complex, which we're getting a front row seat to in California. I mean, they don't want to solve this. Global warming advocate they do not want to actually solve it, right? If they find out, if you show them that nuclear reactors will solve their problem, they're going to deny nuclear reactors.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of the solution that, ironically, the retards over in the early 70s Liberal Party kind of had the right solution of let's stop this funnel of free money into these communities, and create a situation where the incentive is for people to fend for themselves, and for them to, not only the incentive is that they have to do something with their lives, but that if they do put the effort in to do something with their lives, that it can actually bring them somewhere.
Yeah, this was the big, before I took the orange pill, this was the big black pill story for me in Canada to really give up on the system that we had. It was that I took these problems seriously when I first worked with Harper. And if you remember the type of stuff we tried to do, it was exactly this. We tried to create the same sort of elections monitoring service that Canada will send to Ukraine and all that. We said natives can just use this, right? If they want elections, if they want to get away from hereditary chiefs, they can use it. And we made a sequence of laws consequential to each other. So you could choose democracy. And then we had a bill too that would allow them to choose property rights. So the Niska did it out in British Columbia. They actually used both of these provisions. And once that happened, once we showed that there was a way that some entrepreneurial natives could go to elections and then get in on the property rights game, that ended up turning into Attawapiskat and the fake hunger strike, eating soup every day instead. And I remember that was the big story to me. It wasn't that Attawapiskat was real. It wasn't. It was watching the NGO industrial complex, the native Aboriginal industrial complex, wake up the way it did. Remember, they occupied way worse than the truckers ever did. I mean, the occupation of Ottawa at that time was 10 times the footprint, literally 10 times the footprint of the truckers. It was all over the city. You were not, we had to, there was days where it was closed because it was just too much. The whole holiday season, it was there. And months it went on for, and she was dying, yet she was still, I'm not going to fat shame anyone, but she wasn't one of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit models coming out of it. Okay. No one believed that she went on a hunger strike by the way she came out of that thing. It looked like, this predated Uber Eats, but something was getting in there. So, that's to me what led me to believe none of this was solvable. And that it's what made me convinced the Conservatives were too weak to continue, because you had to break their back right there. You went all in. Like there was no backing away. It was just go, got to do it. And they refused. They backed up. They canceled all the laws. And then they set themselves up for this indignity of fake genocide being used to sway elections.
Yeah, they really just sort of moved the Overton window on pearl clutching and made it so that the vast majority of normies in the middle of the political spectrum for a good while there pre-COVID were becoming more and more prone to falling for things like this and to taking it very seriously when they were told by the CBC that, oh no, you need to feel bad because, the Catholics a long time ago murdered some Native kids. And that kind of an extension, they used it to wedge their issues into everything in society. So it's like, you need to feel bad because of this tragedy that we say has happened, that we have no proof has happened. But, it would be, it would be racist and insensitive for you to ask for proof. And so they were able to get quite a lot of political traction and get a lot of their insanity validated by this large group of people in the middle who were just kind of willing to go along with it because, they're trying to be kind. They're trying to be good people, and they're trying to follow the path of that they're being told is what makes you a good person. And I think the thing that the left really has yet to grasp is that big group of people in the middle are starting to wake up to the tactics of the left, and that the insane policies of anti-human collectivism are coming home to roost for more and more people. And when you see things like this, like the most recent one was the missing and murdered, let's add to our acronym, in a way that makes no sense at all. Like you just switched the theme of the acronym to include
MMIW2SQLJQP2 plus is not real.
And the great irony of it is that it's supposed to be an acronym of inclusion, which by adding more and more things, excludes the things that are not added. Right. So now that you've expanded the scope from potential genders and sexualities to just bad things that have happened,
Yeah.
Like, are we honestly gonna leave like the Holocaust out of the acronym? You know,
Shouldn't
are
be.
like
Nope.
there, are we gonna leave the Halifax explosion out of the acronym? Because those
We
people,
must acknowledge that white Jewish men have been unfairly treated, and
yeah, and there was a years ago. I'm a big NBA fan. There was a ref that was caught betting. And what about all the people who took bad bets to this cheating
tragedy of
ref?
our
Should we not
time,
acknowledge the victim?
especially if he was white. Imagine that. It was racial
Yeah,
hustling right there.
yeah,
All the
he was
black
he was a
people
white
betting.
guy taking
uh,
advantage of
Black people
potentially
who
all
like
kinds of
basketball,
minorities.
you know.
So, but once you start to expand to like, we've got like a bad thing that we want to mention, and we're going to put it into this already long and nonsense acronym. Like, people are starting to see how absurd this is.
Well, hopefully that's kind of my theme today, is this
Like,
that's my theme today,
yeah. So they're,
is Canada waking up, you know? Like, I'm sorry, you were lagging for a second. Could be my computer. But that's my theme today, is, are Canadians waking up? Because it's not just this article or not just this development that we're still now finally questioning, whether there was a genocide. I see with the economy, for example, Mark Carney's persuasion tactics have not been as thorough and completely covered by the CBC as normal. And we're seeing, even in that, you had David Dodge, a former governor of the Bank of Canada, on CBC questioning Mark Carney's ability to do this job, questioning Mark Carney's market savvy. Is that, and then, the consequences of what Mark Carney is doing with the economy. He had to run away from the mics a few times. He was also in the United States saying "Make America Great Again," so that created a reverberation in Canada, because he gave a speech in New York, and everyone was like, "Bro, you're talking literally out of both sides of your mouth. Like, you're saying this to Canadians and you're saying that to Americans. Like, we see you. Like, this was a public speech."
We all have the internet.
We all have the internet. So,
Yeah.
and then of course Trump comes out with 51st state again, and Mark Carney just simply doesn't look like he's equipped to handle this environment now, because if even the CBC, now they're carrying a bunch of water for him, they're not making it so hard on him, but they are saying exactly what we're saying. They're saying, what about this? And you're hearing other people say, well, it doesn't make any sense that the economy is doing so bad. And now we see the numbers. It's going to be, I think, $1 trillion now that he's finally publishing economic data. It's going to be $1 trillion in debt over the next 3 years. And that is 3 times more than what Justin Trudeau did, plus COVID mixed in. So 3 times faster, I mean. So Trudeau did $1 trillion in 10 years with COVID baked in. He's doing $1 trillion in 3 years. And I guess it's to keep up with the rest of the world doing AI stuff. We'll talk about that. He came out with the AI plan this week too. So, that just on financial reporting is not going great for him.
Yeah, and the government of Canada is pretty famous for their looseness with their financial reporting, right? They're very happy to make up new terms, move around spending.
Forward guidance mostly comes from us, that idea.
Yeah, it becomes capital spending instead of like ongoing spending and all this stuff. And
the military stuff is hilarious with this.
Yeah.
It's like their lunches or something, or like you got to give them better lunch.
Yeah, it's wild that they get away with the stuff that they do. And if any company tried to just change the rules of financial accounting and file financials that way, they would probably go to jail. And so it's definitely, like most things in our society, the rules for you and the rules for me. And more people are just starting to see it, and they're like, there's just too much absurdity piling up every week, right? We're sitting here, we haven't talked in 3 weeks, and it's like, we can't go back and talk about all the absurd things from the last 3 weeks. There's not time.
I made it 2 weeks back into the history here, the annals of what we've missed, and I couldn't keep going, because it was just like, okay, that was really dumb, but it wasn't as dumb as this thing that happened next. And speaking of dumb, so we're gonna bring it all together here. We got the native reserve problem, right? And then whether or not there was genocide, and now economics, Carney not being able to sell as cleanly, let's say, a little bit of pushback. We're talking about waking up. One of the funniest things he did was he launched Canada's AI policy yesterday. And of course, I think the word, what was the statistic I heard here? Let me just see. I have it here. It is, let me see it. I got it right here. So it is AI strategy includes the words indigenous 6 times more than GPU.
Okay.
So the very first line, supporting indigenous. So first of all, Carney came out, it's AI for all. Okay. The AI is not going to discriminate against you guys. Imagine they're setting up their AI to make sure, right? Because AI notoriously discriminatory, right? We all know that it was born with a prejudice against natives. It hates them. It doesn't want them to get anything. It doesn't want them to get ahead. So we need to support indigenous leadership in AI. They can't even run a radar to go look for bodies. How are they going to go look for AI capacity? So that's the whole point here. You got to make sure that we amplify indigenous-led AI initiatives. We got to get an Indian and start an AI company, because it looks like they're going to be throwing money at them. That's all you need. Not one of the new Indians. We need an old-fashioned Indian. The new ones don't work. They're already in AI everywhere.
Yeah. I happen to know a friend of mine who's been working on a data center.
I don't care. Is he an Indian or not? I don't give a shit.
Well, no, he's got an Indian partner.
Well, that works.
On the reserve.
Okay, that's all we need. Yeah.
That's what you need. And it's an interesting spot, because the natives of Canada are objectively the most free people in the country right now.
They always have been. I'm so jealous of the way they get to cross the border with no passport or anything. I mean, these are the all-timers. They're sovereign people. That's the problem. The treaties gave them actual sovereignty. We didn't get it. We're getting screwed.
Yeah. Man. And now it's kind of become it's like one of the last sacred cows that the left and the government feel they can still bang the drum on and say,
are you being racist with that banging the drum? Is that an Indian? Is that a powwow? Are you making fun of them, Dave? Come on.
I didn't even think of that, but sure. Yeah. I mean,
you can't even have a baseball team that bang the drum. They got to be turned into the Guardians. Don't do that.
Yeah. So, they've pushed it so far, though, and they've used it against us in such a deliberate and heinous way, right? Like that's the sort of, and this is a native guy that told me this term too, that the rent-a-feathers, that the hereditary chiefs of BC, who were paid by the Tides Foundation, Warren Buffett, etc., to, even though they were no longer, these are the children of past chiefs. These are not the democratically elected band council who had voted in favor of the multi-billion-dollar economic development project in their backyard, blocked, the pipelines, the LNG infrastructure, everything that we needed to get our fuel to market, so that we would have to keep putting oil on the trains and paying Warren Buffett to move it on the trains. And, it's getting to the point where this weaponization is so absurd that, like I keep saying, every time they do something absurd, it wakes some more people up. So, that we just saw it with the Alberta independence, the lawsuit against the referendum, where we had a native band of 30 people who somehow has $350 million in the bank, suing the province of Alberta in a completely different province to say that we're not even allowed to vote.
Little bit of good news though about that. It looks like anyway the Supreme Court has come out and said land title by native off reserve will not work. That whole treaty Coquitlam thing, that's all canceled now. So at least there's that. So no, that's in the theme of maybe waking up. At least the Supreme Court says you can keep your house. So like they don't have to take your house.
Yeah.
Yay.
I I think there are elements of the government, of the bureaucratic apparatus, probably of the courts here too, that are starting to see that they've gone so far, and that allowing the radical left to dictate their path will really ultimately just alienate people when the horrible consequences of the collectivism that they've wrought on people come to roost for everyone. And that, you know, they like, if you start stealing people's houses, they will vote against you. So they need to pull it back a little bit, and like they're starting to, just in tiny little bits, but they're still so, like, they're just lacking any kind of self-awareness of their own evil and their own absurdity, that they think, how could anyone disagree with me? This is obviously the right position. That
well,
you know, we must confiscate resources to perpetrate evil.
So I will say the AI question, though, is, I think anyway, forcing a bit of that reality into view, even from Carney. So, you know, first of all, Carney comes out with his indigenous thing, so he's deluded there. You already see Peter Thiel went to Argentina. They released their AI plan today. I think we know why he went there. It's going to be a zero rules situation, and so good for Argentina. But just look at it, he didn't move to Canada, right? But it's, you know, we also heard from Carney, and this is unlike him. He was being realistic. He was saying, look, Canada is absolute dog shit when it comes to using AI right now. We're not getting any of the productivity gains out of AI. He went to the University of Waterloo to say it yesterday, saying that Canada ranks at the bottom of countries in AI training and literacy, and that it's not being used in companies like it is. And, you know, it's true. I mean, I work in Argentina and America. If you're not using AI right now, that's like literally grounds to be fired from a lot of the businesses I work with. They'll actually come out and say that. Like, if you're not using this every day, you probably aren't going to be working here much longer. Not out of any insult to you. It's just that's what's going on. And he's even paying a cost for all of this stuff politically, because it looks like he's losing his majority, because we saw Guilbeault and all the environmental crazies are leaving him. Of course, now it's all getting smoothed over by the fake news. But just as quickly as he gained that, he is getting reality served to him, because, again, that talking out of the two sides, he's not sort of getting away with it like he used to.
Yeah, exactly. They're you know, they haven't realized that we all have the internet, I guess.
They're just getting there.
Yeah, they're a little behind.
And we're even seeing here, I'll share this with you, because people are paying attention to these tricks, and your prediction here looks like it came exactly true. Let's see if this shares correctly 3 ways, the way I like it. Here we see Ottawa pumps brakes on proposed changes to major product environmental reviews. And those changes are, again, to slow things down again. These are not to go faster. This is to pump the brakes. Of course, you're referring to the pipelines, which already we're getting signal they ain't coming. They ain't coming. This is happening while his cabinet is saying they're leaving. They're not leaving more of the AI thing, but it's related to the pipelines, because it's just more energy infrastructure and energy build out, which they don't like, of course. So here we're seeing that the ability of Carney to maneuver and sell each side against each other is weakening. His path is narrowing every day, I think.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, because usually the Liberals, like for the last 10, 15 years, the Liberals have been much better at putting the Conservatives and the right into that position where they kind of have to choose between, like, catering to their base and going towards the middle. And the Conservatives always pick wrong. They always go towards the middle. And the Liberals are just now starting to be put in that same position, but not before their base went so far left as to be just literal insane Marxists who would have us in breadlines within 5 years if they got their actual way. In terms
they'd be there now. Like
policy.
they would organize the breadlines early, just in anticipation of breadlines. They're excited about running the breadline. They loved it in COVID. They loved it in COVID. Still to this day, when you go and line up in Canada, and it used to be Canadians didn't like conflict in the lineup. Now they don't mind people butting the line and all that. Right? They don't. That's fine. It's people who are rude, making jokes. I saw a line, a girl nagging someone the other day in Canada. I just couldn't believe it. Like, for no reason, she starts complaining because it was a handicapped woman, right? in a wheelchair, and she wanted to get where she was going, and she drove her little wheelchair thing, and old lady and immigrant was in her way, and she starts yelling at the immigrant. Right, this is such a Canadian scene, by the way. So she starts yelling at the immigrant, and the immigrant is like tried to move away, but he was wearing his head. He wasn't really trying to be mean, right? He just didn't understand what she wanted. And so she keeps yelling at him, and he goes, "Oh, you're not even from here," she says in French, right? But what does that provoke? But a them guy dressed as a girl gets up, and because she called him an immigrant, now this trans decides to give the old cripple lady a hard time. And I mean, like, really giving it to her in the line. There's no need to talk with that hatred and like just pure Canada. Like you wouldn't find this scene anywhere else ever. And I helped the old lady. I told the trans guy, like, get the fuck out of here. Like, you didn't do anything wrong. The guy should have taken his head things out. Like, get out of the way. There's a sign clearly for handicapped people. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And this is an example of that exact tension between the left and their absurdity and the regular people of Canada, right? And so I had a funny Canadian story. I was flying back from Ireland, stopped in Pearson Airport. Very interestingly, they had customs on the jet bridge pulling over everyone with an Irish passport.
I've heard about this now.
I've never seen that before.
Apparently it's a thing now. They're doing this passport check, another police check.
Yeah. And so we get to the food court, and there's like this Indian family just blasting Indian music on the cell phone, like in the middle of food court, and everyone's kind of like, and I was like, okay, like, so I had a Bluetooth speaker on me that was a lot louder than somebody's cell phone, so I pulled that out and put some Creed on, and next thing you know, I've got like 2 dudes from the food court singing along to Creed with me. And it's that tension that is just getting, like, if I would have done that a year ago, not only probably would I have not gotten the guys singing along with me, I probably got security call.
Yeah, you'd be in jail.
For
banned from
for racism, for drowning out someone's music. And
cultural genocide. You'd have been basically killing kids.
It's a bellwether of the fact that average people, like these random guys from the food court, have had enough of all of the nonsense that they've been pushing on us, including the mass immigration. That's what the old lady was complaining about. I'm sure that there's a lot of areas where they've just pushed regular people too far, and more and more of them are getting to the point where they've had enough of it. And that's like the question for our country now is going to really be, will the left realize how crazy they are and pull back from the ledge a little bit, or are they just going straight off the ledge? And do they even care? Like, because I don't know that, like, Carney's goal, I don't think, is really anything other than to just stay in power long enough to loot. We can see, obviously, loot some giant chunk of the trillions of dollars that he's printing in order to give out, right? And so very obviously Mark Carney is personally trying to steal a lot of that money, and if that's not true, he should sue me.
You're not going to get another one. You're not going to get the other one. Flew the coop, by the way. Let me show you. You're done. You're not there. She's not going to sue you. Oh no, 1 second.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it seems entirely obvious that yeah, great. Very obviously there will be billions, hundreds of billions of dollars doled out to NGOs, government organizations that will then in turn turn around and offer, the kind of things that would have sunk any government almost anywhere in the developed world, where we had 100 of these kind of scandals through Trudeau and didn't sink them at all, and now they're just vastly emboldened and willing to just steal.
The one that went viral this week was that, and I remember this, it was the orange juice. It was Diane Finley who ordered too much orange juice, and it was $17 a glass, and like an actual cabinet member had to quit over a $17 glass of orange juice.
Yeah.
The prime minister's
So
bills came in this week, and it's I think $100,000 in milk or something like that, or like $1,000 in
yeah,
milk. No, it was $150 for cream. I was part of $150,000 bill for eating on a flight.
yeah,
On a flight.
yeah, wild. So they're looting so openly at this point. You know, Carney's going to want to move to the middle just long enough that he doesn't get immediately thrown out of power. You know, if we end up with literal riots in the streets and people occupying Ottawa and everything again, then the Carney government will fall, and he needs long enough to take as much of that, you know, multi-trillion-dollar spending that's now tabled. So that's kind of his incentive, I think. And then
there was the here's the receipt. They had published the receipt, and it is $116 on a liter of coffee creamer. This bill was 53,000 euros for food on the prime minister's jet. But here's what I think, though, and this is where the limit of his persuasion, because he's not a very persuasive guy. That's part of the issue. That's why he spent the week running away from mics. There's a bunch of these ones where he's trying to explain himself. He's terrible at it. But that's why they've got to get the fake news to push for them. And this is where it comes to an end. When you say the point is to stay in power, this is the thing he can't survive. Here we see the newspaper doing the work for him because he can't make this argument. But here saying, as Canada faces crippling debt, it must do the unpopular thing and cut elderly benefits. I'm afraid that your constituency is not going to like this. And remember, that's who's voting for this guy. This is the 65-year-old elbows up boomer libtards that give these guys their rope. And I don't think they're going to get away with this. Like, this looks like a little much, right? If I show this to my mom, who's not a liberal voter, but still, this would actually surprise her, right? This would surprise her.
Yeah. Yeah. They're kind of in between a rock and a hard place. And, you know, any economically literate person would realize that the path that they're taking of, you know, we're in this basically crippled economy that's increasingly just the government sending money to itself. You know, we can't print our way out of that. It's impossible, right? The only way for Canada to have any chance, and it may be way too late already, but the only way that it could have any chance would be to make unpopular decisions like this, and to say that, you know, the idea that you get these massive entitlements just for being a resident of Canada, let alone a citizen of Canada, is just no longer the case. And we have to cut off the spending to the people who are, you know, using
who didn't contribute.
Who
didn't contribute, right? Yeah. I've always thought the Canadian pensions should go income tested, because we do have enough wealthy people that don't need the basic thing. They have their own private retirement. And there's a lot of people who never paid into it. So why do they get it? If you cut just those two constituencies, you'd have plenty to pay for the whole system and probably give them more, fairly even, you know?
Yeah. Well, you kind of circle back to the previous point about the sort of Indigenous involvement, and I can't remember the exact stat. This came up at Danielle Smith's speech at the Cornerstone Forum, and she was saying there's some really shocking number, like 260,000 people in Alberta are using something like 80% of all the government resources. And, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a firefighter yesterday, and a lot of what they do is just driving around waking up fentanyl overdoses these days. And these guys wake up and fight because they're like adrenaline and they're no longer high. And so they're just pissed off. And so he's like, yeah, I end up fighting the same homeless guy like multiple times a year because we saved his life. it's like
Tase
what?
them.
Yeah. I mean, or just don't wake them up. Like at a certain point, these people are asking.
I hate to be unchristian, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it would be a very Christian thing to offer people 3 fentanyl overdose wake ups a year, and if you go beyond that, then you're on your own. There was a crazy story. It was something like 270 times this one guy was woken up within a year in Calgary.
Wow.
Like just overdosing
Wow.
almost every day. And
Well, speaking though of Senator or Governor or Premier Smith's statement, she did give another interesting one this week about public resources that I want to hear your comment on. And I want to hear your whole comment on Smith right now, because a lot of people are saying they suspect she's up to a strategy, but coming out saying that she's pro Canada. Here she is. You've seen the talking points now on the referendum. So first of all, I will say, in Carney's defense, now he's mixing words. But when Carney comes out and says about the referendum, and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, he is correct, I believe, when he says that the Clarity Act is not 50% plus one. It's not. We've known that in Quebec for a long time. The difference is the Alberta referendum question is not a Clarity Act question. Therefore, the Alberta referendum is 50% plus one. So while Carney is correct in saying that the federal government does have a role in the secession of a province, all of that is true, the federal government would have to not so much approve a question, but be okay with a question about its clarity. And that's why it's called the Clarity Act, right? It's about a clear question and a clear majority. Those are the two findings of the Clarity Act: clear question, clear majority. Clear majority is not 50% plus one. So you see a lot of people out there in the secessionist movement saying, no, it is 50% plus one. They're only correct about the Alberta referendum as it is, which is really a referendum about a referendum, which is what Quebec did every time, right? It's a negotiating leverage position. So I don't want to see Alberta sovereignists fall down this fake news thing and waste all their energy getting all, arguing a stupid point. But there's that one. And then the other one is they're all talking about costs now, right? The new PSYOP is you can't get a passport, you stupid idiot. You don't know where passports are. You can't make your own passport, you dumb Albertan idiots. And here, Premier of Alberta is saying and talking more about the costs. I think these costs are accurate. I don't think they're prohibitive, but that's the other thing you're hearing the Federalists argue against the Albertans, that it's going to be too expensive.
Yeah. And like, we just need to argue with the math. This is false. Like it would not cost $400 billion to form Alberta.
I don't think I agree. I mean, it's going to cost something. I don't think it's 400.
It will cost something, but it will cost definitively less than we're currently paying for the entire rest of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And even if it is only a 10-year version of transfer payments, well, okay, that's like a 10-year mortgage. Do you mean in 10 years we're not going to have to pay for this anymore? Okay.
Yeah. So
deal.
Good time to bring up the site that I made that I shared with you there.
Yeah, let's see it. Let me see
AlbertaBitcoin.com.
Can you share from your screen?
Yes, I believe so.
Or I can, sorry, AlbertaBitcoin.com?
Yep.
Okay, I can do that. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Fun stuff. Let me pull this out. I'm going to have to make it. Actually, I'm going to shrink us in the screen share so that we're able to see it in its widescreen.
Perfect. So yeah, this is the actual math. This shows this counter here that looks a lot like a debt tracker. Shows the net fiscal outflows from Alberta since 2010.
Whoa.
And you can see it's going up there at about $600 a second, which you're welcome. You could buy probably about one pylon in Montreal every second with that $600. And then I've got some thought experiments here where, what if instead of spending $260 billion, which this is not a theoretical guess of what it would cost, this is actually cost.
Yeah.
And if we put this into Bitcoin in a tiny fraction of it instead, just a tiny little bit, right? And so we've got various scenarios kind of like modeled after when other countries, major companies, and different entities entered the Bitcoin world. And you can see what the impact would be on the total holdings of Alberta. And so like I started with when I opened my first Bitcoin store, which was 2013 there, and Bitcoin Brains. And if the government, instead of spending that money, if they had sent 0.05% of it on Bitcoin, that would now be an extra $11 billion that we would have sitting in the Heritage Fund. And then the other thing that I think is really cool on this site, if you scroll generally down to the bottom, we've got some individual spending decisions that we can compare.
Mayor Nenshi, where's the ring?
So there's the ring right there, number 2.
The big blue ring. Yes.
The big blue ring could have been 500 Bitcoin.
Oh my God. The Peace Bridge, he spent, it was 4 million Bitcoin, 5 million Bitcoin.
For a bridge that was built in
What is
Spain.
going on with his face? Why is he getting so, why is his face contorting crooked the way it is? Why is he, like, he wasn't a cross-eyed crooked? I don't want to make fun of his looks, but something's going on with his face. Have you, like, what is happening? Naheed Nenshi, I mean. He was always an ugly guy, but I mean, something's up.
He looks like he's melting.
Has he got a disease or something? That's what I mean. I saw him for the first time the other day, and I couldn't believe it.
He really looks like he's melting, but
Arrive Can app.
He
McKinsey contract.
He's not a healthy guy for sure.
Spaceport, the spaceport. We need them.
Yeah, I added the spaceport, which yeah, I had to get something from Harper in there. But there were not as many examples. It was very easy to find a lot of Trudeau examples and a lot of.
I'm glad you got Kenny there. Kenny's hating on your sovereignty, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, Kenny is a paid globalist shill.
Mocking it. I just, you know what? The truth is, I don't want to hear what a virgin has to say, an adult virgin has to say about almost anything. I just don't care.
I don't think Kenny's a virgin.
Oh, well, he was really excited when Secretary Treasury Besant was talking about the Bitcoin bottom. He loves the bottom talk. Yeah. Besant was talking about going all in on the bottom, and that's what made Kenny a Bitcoiner. He wasn't until then, but he heard Besant going all in on the bottom, and that was it. That was it for him. But yeah, you know what I mean. So in this case, Kenny, I mean, I don't like what he's saying, and it's just a travesty that he's become that guy. He's worse than any rhino could possibly be. I mean, he is absolutely toxic to sovereignty in Alberta. So what do you think the numbers, that's just the answer. What do you think about Smith in general with this stuff though?
Yeah, I don't know what to think. Like I like most people are kind of running out of trust for her. And
that's what I'm wondering. What's going on the ground here?
Yeah, this one is so transparently absurd that we should just start making up our own numbers and say separating from Alberta will.
Actually, I just got a coupon on Big Red Deals, and it's free.
Yeah, well, it would actually save us $100 trillion, right? Like every Albertan would get a check for $1 billion if we separated. Like we can just make shit up too, and this is like the numbers are so vast that it's just not even credible. And anybody with an even basic understanding of the situation knows that the outflows are so significant that it would more than cover the costs of whatever we needed to do. Right? Like we're not going to need $400 billion. Like what would you even spend $400 billion on in Canada, in Alberta, in a province of,
Yeah, I mean the Quebecers are even coming out and saying she's wrong. Now Quebec did a lot of planning. Like they really put their mind together on how to steal money from Alberta before they got going, and they had to get all of that arranged and make sure they had their sovereign wealth fund filled. But seeing one of the predictions we made here that the Quebecers are coming to support Alberta and all of this. I know they're basically just every time taking the opportunity to say, no, Alberta can do whatever they want on this. You're wrong, Canada. They always take time to remind us that Alberta can't have a country, of course, because there's no culture. That's one of their favorite lines. But I will remind them that they can say Alberta has no culture all they want, but they just have to see that an Albertan actually last week broke the all-time record for jumping off a waterfall. Look at this. How can they say there's no culture? Look at this guy. You're telling me there's no culture with these people? Look at this. Where are you going to find people to do this kind of thing? Look at this Albertan here.
I was
no culture my ass. Come on. And he landed it,
Yeah. I was last weekend. I was at the Leduc Rodeo, which Leduc is a small town, maybe 40,000 people, small city, I guess, 40,000 people. It's where the Edmonton International Airport is. Okay. And it's like a real blue collar oil and gas city. And they put on a great rodeo. And that's, it's white culture.
Obviously culture. And the only reason why Alberta culture can be constricted or can be argued to have been constricted in any way is because of the Canadian National Park Service keeping Albertans from the goddamn mountains and making you spend all your time on the goddamn flatlands. I mean, I like flatlands, fine, but it's true. Culture would be found in the mountains if you let them go there. But you can't build a town.
I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any worry that we don't have enough culture. The difference with Quebec is that we don't have like a single shared ethnic heritage the same way that Quebec does that ties us together. And so, we have this adopted identity that we've all, pretty much everyone in Alberta, the average Albertan is the descendants of European immigrants who moved here within the last 100 years for the most part. And maybe 100, 150 years. And it's a giant mix of, British, English, Irish, Scottish, Nordic, Eastern European, and, we don't have that same sort of bell that we can ring of we're French that Quebec has. And so in that sense, it's a, it's a disadvantage in terms of organizing people and getting them all to believe in a common direction. But the fact is that Quebec is not it's not a rational case for Quebec to separate, right? It's going to be very bad for Quebec in the near term to stop getting all the free money. And, obviously in the long term, the same holds true as what we were talking about with the Indigenous bands. If you cut off the free money and the people of Quebec actually have to start developing their resources and working on things that are not the government, Quebec will be in a vastly better situation 10 years after separation. But, the arguments for Quebec independence and separation do not rest in the logical. They rest in the emotional, right? And
and there's also a penalty for the ethnic cohesion in that Quebec doesn't seem to give a shit that it's losing its Jews now. I mean, we got our chief heart surgeon leaving the Montreal Jewish General. We had a firebombing this morning in a synagogue in Westmount. Gad Sad leaving for the same reasons. So the Quebec thing applies to them, not really everybody else. I mean, maybe I get a bit of inclusion because I'm English and not a Jew, but I doubt it. I doubt it. So there's a cost to that as well. Now, when I see Carney appointing Omar Algebra, whatever his name is, as the anti-Semitic, the anti-Semite board, I don't Quebec. That's the only thing that Quebecers would get pissed off at, is that they want a Quebecer on that board and not Omar. I don't know how to say his name, Alagraba or Agraba or Algebra. I call him Omar Algebra. I always have. He's just such a weird guy. So there you go. Now that's one end of the country. One other thing I think I want to ask you, just because I bet what is this new lady who won the Conservative leadership in British Columbia? Are you connected to that story at all? It's Carrie Lynn Finley. So there was a leadership vote out in Alberta. It looks like the Conservatives, in British Columbia. It looks like the Conservatives in British Columbia are scumbags. Doesn't look like they kicked out that anti-vax journalist. There was an anti-vax journalist there, and it was the Conservative Party that kicked her out because she used to work for Global and she got fired for the vax thing, and then they kicked her out. at the winning at the convention where this lady won. What is it about this lady? Is she going to be good for anything? Is this a separation ally of Alberta? Is this anything interesting in Canada?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't I don't know anything about her. I haven't followed the race too closely, but I can give you a small anecdote from the rodeo actually here, where sort of a friend of mine was there, and she's very involved in politics and was on her way out to the convention the day after the rodeo that she was there for, and she is very bright woman, but falls into the trap that a lot of the conservative political establishment does, that you've spoken about with Harper, of this idea that like all we need is better government.
Mm-hmm.
And
They'll believe
it's
that, like,
just
if we're right.
yeah, all we have to do is like stick to our principles and govern properly, and that will bear out. And that was very much the sort of the feeling that I got from her as she was discussing this BC vote. And that's just a delusional tactic, right? Like, it's especially in a place like Vancouver, you're not going to get the ear of people with just rational thought, right? Like they're going to need to take a hard position at a hard time and stick to it. And that's not something that I see a lot of appetite for. So I don't know. I don't really care very much about what is going on in the
I don't know either. Yeah, this guys, if you're from America and you're wondering why Canada's going to fail, this is, I just don't care about British Columbia. I couldn't, like, okay, I don't know. Like, I literally, my care for Oregon, Washington State, and British Columbia are all within the same sphere.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't really know what's going on. I want the best for all these people, but I don't know what's going on. Like, I can't keep up with it.
They're beautiful places that I would love to visit more if they can ever get their shit together. And but I've for a long time kind of considered the coastal regions of the West here to be just like, if we were in a zombie movie, that'd be like the area on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, well, I whenever I look at it, I just think shit flows downwards, and British Columbia is on top of California. That's what I see,
Yeah,
shit flows downwards, and that's what's happening, right?
Yeah, so
that's Canada.
Yeah, so like what I'm going to predict without any knowledge of the situation is that this person will be inept and toothless and will.
She looks like a B team player from Harper's old government, like a B team player, like not part of the A team. Well, he theoretically was on the A team back then. Theoretically, he was on the A team. Theoretically, he was like second in charge for a little while after. I'm not sure if Colin Whitfield is talking about Max Bernier. He was a little bit second place until they got all upset about the hooker with the boobs and the secret information, the secret dossier. Remember, they got him out of office because he left some stuff at her house. That was a big scam. That didn't matter. So nobody cared about that. But there you go. Yeah. So I just, you're right. I don't know. And we'll see what happens, I guess. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Maybe we should invite a Bitcoiner from BC on to give us.
Let's do that. Yeah. Let me look for one for next week, because I really I'm better. I know more about the Maritimes because they're next to me, and I have a lot of kinship, because the Montreal or the Quebec Anglos, the only real people in Canada that we have anything in common with are the Maritimers. We've had sort of a similar demographic history. We even even linguistically, we don't say pop like they do in Ontario, like the Midwesterners. We say soda like the Maritimers, right? There's just a few of those things where we're more similar to the Maritimes, and so I have a certain kinship to them. And we were abandoned by Canada too, the Quebec Anglos, and so even more so. I mean, we're the original people that you can just straight up discriminate against and no one cares. Like, just everyone's fine with it. Like, That's why all these people, shocked now that white people are being treated this way. It's like, guys, I'm sorry to tell
You
you.
should announce that you've discovered mass graves of Anglo Montrealers.
Oh, they're everywhere. Yeah. We're all dead. Yeah. Well, I told you for a long time I tried to build a statue to the founder of Toronto, René Lévesque, in downtown Toronto, but with only an English sign because I thought that was really going to get people's heads going. English only sign to the founder of Toronto, René Lévesque. It takes most Canadians a second to put the whole thing together. Put the whole joke together, but it would be art if I did. I was gonna clandestinely put it in.
Yeah. So maybe someone will reach out or tell us who we should get from BC. I don't know what immediately comes to mind.
Yeah, I know it's Scott Dettles. Maybe those guys. They might be interesting. All those guys.
Yeah, that's a good point. Scott
Yeah,
would be good. He was out
I
in
think they know
Ireland
their
with me.
politics there enough, right? Invite him around next week.
The
Let's do
interesting thing. So Scott's out in Kelowna, and in a lot of ways, Kelowna is a lot more similar to Alberta than it is to the coast.
If we really, one of my dreams here is if we really shake Canada up and break it, we got to refigure even the provinces because there's no good goddamn reason why Northern Ontario doesn't join Manitoba. I mean, that's a stupid thing. They're the same place. They have nothing to do with Southern Ontario. Cut that thing right by Cornwall, straight across. Quebec should take a bit of that stuff. Ottawa, Cornwall, all of that. The border should be just south of Cornwall and straight across after. Right to the Georgian Bay and all that, and then everything up there is Manitoba. Southern Ontario just on its own, which is fine. Why do we need all these giant provinces all the time? Giant-sized provinces. Like, there's enough going on in Southern Ontario. They don't need Canadian Shield. Basically, if there's Canadian Shield, it's not Ontario anymore. That would be my rule.
Yeah.
And then of course British Columbia should be totally sliced and diced. I mean, there's no Saskatchewan should just be absorbed right into Alberta. We get even bigger provinces,
So the interesting thing, so I spoke at this Cornerstone Forum that we've talked about a couple of years ago, and I made the guy before me was a guy who kind of like the Plan B passport thing, who he helps you get out of the country with all your assets kind of thing. And so he had a whole presentation about leaving the country. And then when I was speaking, I was like, I am leaving the country, but I'm taking the province of Alberta with me. Got a standing ovation for that one.
That's a good line. That's a good line.
This is 3 years ago now. And somebody in the crowd's like, and take Saskatchewan too. We're in Lloydminster, which is half Saskatchewan, half Alberta. And so somebody else takes Saskatchewan too, but that makes a lot of sense, right? Like we're like very, very culturally aligned with Saskatchewan. We have a lot of the same sort of industries. We have a lot of farming, a lot of oil. But the bigger picture that goes back to what we're all talking about here is from the sovereign individual that we always bring up, that generally speaking, the day of the large scale nation state is over, and we will be breaking into a lot more smaller states. And I would actually predict the opposite eventually, that not that Alberta and Saskatchewan will join forces, but I predict that Alberta will no longer be a single
unified
country at some point. And
I did a thing with what's his name, Saifedean on Monday, and I think America survives all of this because it is a decentralized nation state already and is so flexibly capable of oscillating back to a decentralized formation and local sovereignty and stuff like that. It just has that flexibility to be able to do it, which is what you see emerging anyway, right? Even the Trump, it's one of those things that it works no matter what. If Trump is successful, that's the way it goes. If Trump is unsuccessful, the sheer revulsion of politics for all this failure between Obama, Trump, and Biden will create a scenario where the federal government will be weakened and less powerful. And, that's where we're headed no matter what. I don't think the United States can roll the clock back on that.
Yeah, that's the only chance that the large scale nation states have to persist longer. Switzerland's probably going to be fine. And that kind of model where you have they've got the cantons, and the cantons, the local governments hold most of the power in their federation. And even in the future Republic of Alberta, I would envision that there will come a time when there will be tension between the central government and the rural areas, um,
especially if the cities, maybe just urban, rural, because the cities are about, if Alberta in the next year is successful in its endeavor, it will be in the same way that René Lévesque created Toronto. You're going to have to build a statue to Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau, each together embracing their foundation of a new country. And those cities will become the richest. You'll need the statues because you're going to have so much money and so many new places to fill. You're just going to have to build statues everywhere.
Yeah, and the hazard here in Alberta, there is the divide between the rural and the
urban,
the city, but there's also just sort of like the north-south Calgary-Edmonton divide, that
like farmer to oil man.
Kind of. I mean, there's oil in both directions. There's very different kinds of oil in the north and the south. But
is the south where you get the like not the oil sands?
Yeah, the north is where the oil sands are. So we've got more conventional oil, just like massive gas reserves in the south of Alberta as well. So the famous saying was Rudyard Kipling referred to it as all hell for a basement. Now a great song. Yeah, so like the bigger divide now, and the one that I could see persisting in a sovereign Alberta between Calgary and Edmonton, where Calgary is kind of like the business hub of Alberta. We've got all the head offices of all the oil companies. Edmonton is increasingly like, it's more of a blue collar town, but the bigger difference, I think, is the fact that they've got the government there. And so all the government agencies, all the NGOs that cluster around, all of the government spending is generally in Edmonton. And a free Alberta, I would hope, would drastically reduce that government spending. And the end result would be a lot of unhappy people in Edmonton. And so, like, eventually every nation is going to run into that kind of tension where, when you have even small cultural differences combined with different economic incentives, the incentive will be for everyone to just be like, you know what, we're just going to go do our own thing to a smaller and smaller scale. And the only way that these kind of, like, an area like the size of Alberta, that's quite large, and will be quite a large country, in order to stay together, they're going to have to really decentralize power the way that the Swiss and other countries have done, in order to keep, like, one region from extracting wealth from the other, essentially.
Or you just don't, one of the things, just because it's on my mind, the Hamiltonian system, or seeing the American system, the Hamiltonian system, the protect your borders, create a national bank, build infrastructure, right? I mean, it's essentially the Quebec model. That's what a lot of people are not embracing here, is that Quebec has been living the American system for a long time. That train that the Alberta money paid for, people don't realize what an actual marvel this thing is. This was built by our sovereign wealth fund. Thank you again, Alberta, for the generous deposits every year. We would not be anywhere near $600 billion if it wasn't for Alberta. So again, it's just great. And now they built this thing privately, right? So this train that now has, I think, almost 100 miles of track is under a quarter of the cost of what most North American subway lines are going in at, because it's a privately run train. It's privately owned. It's the sovereign wealth fund that knows how to manage infrastructure. They don't give up. They're not sentimental about shit, right? They run private infrastructure. They know how to finance stuff. They figured out, because cities can't figure this stuff out. It's always cost overruns. They got this thing built on time, under budget, no employees. There's no one there. There's no one running the train. There's no one on the train. There's no one operating the train, because they were already fake. What do you need someone running a train for? It's on tracks, for God's sakes. You don't need a pilot of a train. That was a UN thing, or a union thing for a long time. So this thing here that we have is more or less the future of infrastructure in America. You're going to see much more of this national socialist type stuff going on. And this is basically what America is headed to. And, when I think of the model that we've got here, and when I think about, what what could, I guess, come of Alberta, and I think of this Hamiltonian system, what I'm pleased by both Montreal and Calgary, like New York City, like why Hamilton chose New York City as the head of the foundational economic base, that it wasn't a government town. That's the only reason why Quebec is going to live to see another day, is that these motherfuckers didn't infest my city with all their government bullshit. It's not like Toronto. Toronto is fucked when Bay Street shuts down. They are fucked because they're left with the Doug Fords and the sludge people, because that's the other part of their city. Montreal, like Calgary, figured it out on its own. We went through really tough times, and we figured it out without more government bullshit. We still have entrepreneurs here.
Yeah, there's an interesting detail that I'm going to speculate on in there. And like, part of what we're struggling with right now is just the sheer like insanity of the scale of the grift that the governments of the world are perpetrating on us. And there's like an undercurrent in Montreal that I think has kept the place a little bit more reasonable, in the sense that, you know, it would have been very easy for the political class of Quebec to steal that $600 billion. And they stole plenty of money, no doubt about it. You know, I've heard crazy stories about money being stolen, but the fact that the mafia is so integrated into Quebec and society, and the government, the construction,
and they have to build now, because that's the deal, the new deal. If they keep building old shitty stuff, they're gonna go in jail. So they have to build good.
So I feel like the mafia is kind of like the example of privatized grift that had to like stay within the reasonable bounds and at least produce like a facsimile of what they were intending to have paid for. And so you can see it. Like I sent you guys, you and Brad, I was driving by yesterday, the Big Blue Ring in Calgary, and it's a weird contrast, because we've got our Big Blue Ring in Calgary, and then there's the Big Gray Ring in Montreal, and it really speaks to the differences in how the two groups steal and waste the money, right? Because the Calgary Ring was an expensive debacle, cost $470 some thousand, and is in a field by the airport for no particular reason. And like, you kind of have to be driving a weird way that most people wouldn't normally go to get to the airport to even see it. So like, you have to be coming from somewhere very particular to even end up going past this ring. And then they realized that this field in the middle of nowhere was not properly lit. And so they put lampposts on top of the ring, and it just looks stupid. It's just ridiculous.
Oh, I gotta put this up here.
And by contrast, the Montreal ring, which is gray, is much nicer. It's a much nicer ring. It's thicker.
It's amazing. It's like people take pictures all the time.
Yeah, and it's like a tourist attraction, like in the middle of the city, that you can walk up to and like get a picture of yourself in the ring.
We get the circus people to do shows all summer in it. They hang from it and all that. We got a lot of circus people here.
But your ring cost $5 million, right? Which obviously we paid for a good chunk of that $5 million. And so Montreal has gotten this spot where, I think because of the fact that they've got this grift, the mafia grift, built into their society and built into the government and the whole structures of power. Yeah, look at this thing. Like, there's no reason for that at all.
It looks like it would roll, and those are handlebars.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
like it looks like it's like a weird bike or something. Yeah, it's like a unicycle with handlebars or something. Unreal.
And but yeah, because of the fact that there's been this sort of tether to reality based on the fact that it was not actually the government doing the stealing. They've had to like keep making things that are real. And so in Calgary, the grift is just like directionless and almost accidental.
It's just like running into Niha Nenchi's crooked face.
Yeah, and like face. I don't believe that this was a deliberate attempt to steal $470,000. I think it was just like absurd government process gone awry. And it was, and so that's kind of the big difference, I think, and that's why, like, it's almost like the mafia is protecting Quebec from the ravages of Carney's collectivism, while we and the rest of the country get looted. And in Ontario, their grift is just like over the top completely. Like, they're just going to be like, yeah, it's a $200 million spaceport. Like, I promise you,
your thing makes sense. Yeah, your frame makes sense, because look, the minute they try and create one of these tent towns, sorry, we Giuliani their asses. We get right in there with their one-way tickets down to Toronto, add to the Toronto. We're used to go to Toronto, everybody, the land of opportunity. It's much warmer. You're going to love it. It's so great, right? Don't come back. So the only ones who don't go, the only people I see on tents in Quebec are local Quebecers, like people from here speaking Joal Québécois, who just can't afford the rent, and probably a little bit of fentanyl mixed in, and they're screwed over. But there's not that many of them. They come in little pockets here and there. Nothing like what I see across America or Toronto or anything like that, right? Very much more than when I was a kid. We didn't have this as a kid. There was no such thing. But our cops will bust their asses too. Like, we don't have a problem with that. Quebecers aren't sentimental about that. Well, you're phased out and frozen for a second. I'll shut that down and wait for it to come back. Anyway, though, we are almost at the end of our time. I will bring you back to say goodbye if it's in. There we go. There we go. You had an unfortunate, I took you off because you were frozen in an unfortunate face posture. Yeah.
That's funny.
All right, my man. Well, we'll see you next week. We're at the end of our time here. I feel like I've got a good update on Canada now. I feel good. I feel like we're ready to separate and break this country. I think it's going to happen. I think the golden age of Canadian failure is just in front of us, and we shall enjoy it. So, any plans for the weekend? Any travels coming up? Any interesting things in June coming up for you?
I'm kind of FOMOing on going to Prague, but I came back from Ireland. I had like a half a day here at home, and then I was off to the Leduc Rodeo, and like, I'm just so sick of traveling right now. So I'm not going to Prague. I'm gonna hang out at home for a month at least. Maybe something after the Stampede.
Fun, man. All right, dude. Well, see you next week then.
Sounds good.
Thanks for coming, my man. All right, that was Dave Bradley. We love Dave. We love having Dave on the show. We love hanging out with Dave. Too bad about the trip. I know Citadel Daniel would have loved to have seen him. Brain Melt coworker asked me to prove that genocide didn't happen, says ZB Van. Can't prove a negative. There you go, everyone. Indeed. Have a great afternoon. Let me just tell my producer I'm about to cut, and then I shall say my goodbyes. Indeed, that is the end of our weekly coverage here on Roxham TV. We hope you enjoyed it. We had a lot of great guests today. I had a great time with Saifedean. We had Saifedean around. I recorded a podcast, not with Roxham yesterday, with Tom Luongo again. You should see that today, maybe. It might come out today. If you haven't had enough content with me in it today, you might get more. It might be coming out later. And indeed, here we are at the end of our Canadian coverage and the end of our weekly live coverage here at Roxham. If you've been with me just for today, thanks for watching. If you've been with me all week, thanks for watching. Indeed, if you're just passing through, thanks for watching. You're about to see the ad followed by the thanks for watching screen, but I wanted to tell you personally before you see the screen, have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks for watching. Peace.